Welcome to Beyond the Facade podcast. I'm your host, Luke Gordon, and I'm thrilled to have you join me in this space today. What we're going to be doing is diving deep into the trials and triumphs and truths of seeking authenticity. Becoming your true self isn't about a single action or moment. It's a relentless pursuit, a commitment to self that reveals the rich connection and meaning that our life has to offer. So whether this is your first time tuning in or you're a regular listener, know this: what you're building here goes beyond a conversation. You're here to challenge, to change, and to celebrate the incredible journey of becoming your authentic self. Because when you dare to show up fully, the rewards are immeasurable. So welcome to Beyond the Facade. Let's get started. It is good to have you here. I have our guest today, Morgan Ellsworth. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about her, and then she can speak for herself and defend herself if I get anything wrong or if I make any mistakes. She is a new coach for us at Choose Recovery Services. We handpicked her. Sometimes people come to us that are coaches and therapists and say, hey, we learned about your organization. At least my perspective, Morgan, was us saying, okay, this person has a lot of value, so I wanted to share with you the value that she has. So if I think about the men specifically that are listening to this podcast, and I know there's more than just the men, what expertise she brings is her own experience and her training of children, adult children or teenage children or even younger than that, of them navigating their journey with a dad who acted out sexually and betrayed not just trust within the partner relationship, but also has a lot of destruction, a lot of things in the wake when it comes to his children. And she's a pro on this. So I was just excited to invite her here and have you guys get a chance to listen to her. So she has her own experience with it, and she's also got training that comes with it. So I'm just glad to have you here, Morgan. What do you have to say for yourself?
Yeah, thank you. No, that's such a kind introduction that you gave to me. Very just validating of where I'm at in my career and in my training, and just to kind of add to give a little bit more information about kind of who I am and where I'm at in my life. As Luke mentioned, I have walked my own journey of family betrayal and have had my own experience with betrayal trauma and healing from that and navigating family relationships and personal growth. And because of that, that inspired a lot of what I have studied and what I am pursuing as a career. So I have a degree in family studies. I'm studying to be a marriage and family therapist. I've got a few years of coaching experience. I'm APSATS trained. I am just super passionate about helping families. And my goal, honestly, is to just be a resource for families who are experiencing betrayal and really be an advocate and be a voice for teens and children and adult children who experience betrayal. I feel like that's an underserved population within the betrayal trauma world. And so I'm excited to step in and be that voice and start some really important conversations around how to help and support kids along with the family and in the partner relationship and the work that they may already be doing in their marriage, and just kind of bringing your kids along for the healing journey.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. When it comes to jumping into this stuff, I have a question for you. So the question, and I want to set this up with, I've had Morgan come to quite a few of my men's groups, and there's this thing where I invite her, and I'm so excited that she's there, and they listen to her, and we set up a Q&A, and you can see they're kind of like, I don't know what question to ask. I love my kids. I really want to support them. So what I do is I say, okay, guys, put in the chat from 1 to 10, like 10 being very confident about being a dad navigating this, or 1 being not confident at all, a dad navigating this. And then what they all start putting in, they start putting in 2s and 3s, and then all of a sudden they start like going, oh, I got a question now. Because they start to understand the significance and almost just like the overwhelmingness. And what's interesting from my own experience and from listening to them is their partner, their spouse or their partner, their pain is the most relevant pain and the thing that they're focused on. And they haven't got to yet their child or their children and what experience they're having. And then as soon as we bring it up, they're like, oh my goodness, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And it's not like this is a new feeling overwhelmed. It's this general underlying theme of, I know there's destruction and I'm just struggling knowing how to interact with my spouse. I don't even know what to do with my kids. some version of that. So do you just mind sharing from your own experience? What is the child are going through? What are they experiencing? So maybe some blind spots that a man might have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks for asking. That's something that I think is so misunderstood or not even thought about is what is my child experiencing? And a couple things that come to my mind initially is a lot of times kids will experience high levels of emotion that they probably have not dealt with or experienced before everything happened with your family. And so giving that validation to the child that it's okay for you to feel and experience what's coming up for you. Even putting that terminology or that language around you're experiencing betrayal, you're experiencing betrayal trauma. Here's what that might look like. I think a lot of times a child's response mirrors in some ways a betrayed partner. So if you think about what's happening in your wife, in her life right now, she's experiencing anger, she's experiencing sadness and frustration and hypervigilance, and her secure attachment has been severed in a lot of ways. Now apply that to your child as well. There's very similar patterns that come with children. So they experience emotions that are all over the board that they don't know how to deal with a lot of the time. They experience anger and frustration. And one big area that I think differs between a father and child relationship versus husband-wife relationship is the child is not married to their dad. They're not in love with their dad. And so a lot of times it's harder to bridge that relationship and to want to make amends and to start that healing process. And so I think understanding that although a child may be experiencing something similar to your wife or to your partner, it may take longer and it's going to look different for that healing process to actually happen because your attachment to them is different. It's still important. There's still work that needs to be done in that relationship, but just recognizing that one, there has been a hurt or a trauma that has happened to this child, and two, showing up and trying to make amends and trying to work on the relationship is going to be huge in that child's healing and in your relationship with them. And so those are a few things right off the top of my head that come to my mind about what it's like from a child's perspective to experience betrayal and healing from that.
So they need a voice to be able to express their emotions, like being able to identify them and express them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important and given the space to be able to do that.
Okay. So here's the thing that comes to my mind. I have two of my kids that I feel like it's impossible to get them to share emotions. So what about them? Like I got two of them that are like, you ask them one question, they'll go on for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And you have two of them that are like, they're not that way.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you do with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say just because they are not talking about it or open to sharing doesn't mean the emotions aren't there. A lot of times the kids will show up and they'll be like, I'm okay. This hasn't impacted my life at all. I'm happy. But deep down, there's so much pain and hurt going on, and it's being bottled and it's being pushed away. And so obviously you can't force them to talk and to open up. But I think showing up in a way that they know if and when they are ready to have that conversation, they know that you are a safe place. They know that, I'm not ready to talk to my dad yet, but he's been showing up and he has proven to me that I can come and talk to him if and when I'm ready to have that conversation. I think that's going to be huge. And another plug too is offering support outside of the family. So maybe they're not comfortable talking to you about their emotions, but they still may need to process that with a therapist or a coach or in their own group setting. And so giving them the space to be able to do that in a place that is comfortable and where they feel safe, if that's not with their parents right off the bat.
Okay. So I'm thinking about worried that they'll ever bring something to me. So should I let that go if for the ones that are more guarded and closed off, or should I try to be prompting some stuff with them, some emotions and feelings? Like how much should I show up in their world trying to, I don't know. Does my question make any sense even though I'm not finishing it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. So the way I interpreted that is if my child doesn't want to share, how much do I show up and how much do I push their, what types of questions do I ask?
Mhm.
And that's a tricky one. I think it's very situational with your relationship with your child, where their age, their maturity level. But I think the general rule of thumb would be it's better to show up in some way, in some capacity, than to not show up at all. So, for example, what I mean by that is let's say that you try one time to reach out to your, let's say your 16-year-old son. In my experience, those ones are really hard to get to open up. You show up to your son one time and you say, hey, do you want to talk about your feelings and what's going on? And he immediately shuts you down and says, no, no way, I want to talk about that. That doesn't give you permission for that to be the last time that you ever bring it up with him. You're going to
Mm.
experience resistance. But I would strongly encourage check ins occasionally, whatever frequency feels best for you and your son, if that's every couple weeks or once a month, or maybe you do some individual work and you learn how to have some more empathy and create space for him, and then you practice that with him. But I think consistency over time, eventually he may feel comfortable opening up. And going back to that timeline piece too, that your wife may be a lot quicker to feel safe to open up to you, and it may take a lot longer with your child. So if after a few weeks your wife is starting to share that connection with you again, but your child isn't, that's going to be really uncomfortable for you because you're like, okay, I'm doing this work and I'm safe. Look at this connection I'm rebuilding with my wife. How come I can't rebuild that with my child? It's going to take a lot longer for them. In my experience, it has taken a lot longer for them to feel that safety and to bridge that gap. So continue to show up. I think the worst thing you could do is cut yourself out entirely and be like, they don't want to talk to me, so I'm not going to talk to them and just I'm going to let them deal with it. I would say more times than not, being someone who shows up and lets them know, hey, I want to be safe for you. You can come to me if and when you need to. Over time, the child is way more likely to take the bait and reach out and engage in that conversation with you.
There's something that you said that really stuck out to me, and I was thinking about secure attachment was what we're going for here. There's four different types of attachment. Secure is that one that's going to create a child, a teenager going into adulthood that is really going to thrive in life if they feel secure. And there's two things that a parent does to create secure attachment or an environment they foster. One of them is when they show up with the child, they are letting it be about the child and not about themselves. So they forget themselves, the parent does. And they just go, okay, what are you experiencing? Like getting on their level. Whatever's going on, I'm meeting you there. I'm looking you in the eyes. Like what it looks like you're sad. If we're talking about a really young child,
Mm-hmm.
looks like you're sad. Is what are you feeling? Is that sadness? You're there with them in that emotion. And then the other piece of it, which I think is forgotten more often, and I'll give you the what doesn't create security and the one that does, which is boundaried or permissive. So one, the child gets whatever they want, and then the other one is the child understands and they get this consistency of knowing what to expect. And boundaried is maybe a weird word, but so I'll just stick with that part of the child gets that consistency from their parent. They know what they're going to get. And that's where I love that you're talking about frequency when it comes to check-ins. Like one of the most destructive things we can do is like set up something for a child where they think they can rely on us and then we're not consistent for them. And that's really destructive. That creates that anxious attachment because we don't know they're here, we don't know they're going or coming. And I just thought about that. I thought that was gold in that consistency. But here's the deal, Morgan. I know you can relate this in your own story, but it freaks me out, and I hate this. Worried that when I show up, I'll be able to do it in the right way with my child. I just want it's. I watch my wife do it so well, like how she shows up, and I'm like, am I emotionally mature enough to be the kind of parent I need to be? Maybe I just should not at all because I think I'll cause damage compared to being there. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to start going back to that attachment theory a little bit.
Okay.
Something that applies to your question that I think also fosters a secure attachment is making a repair if there's been a mistake. I think that's really characteristic of secure attachment is nobody's going to be perfect. No dad is going to navigate these conversations perfectly or sufficiently, especially at the beginning. But being able to come back and say, hey, I'm sorry that I said this, or I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry I've caused you this pain. That repair piece, I think, is also huge in establishing that secure attachment. And so applying that to, oh, I'm worried about showing up perfectly in this conversation with my child. You don't have to be perfect. Sufficient parenting is good enough, especially in these types of situations. And you maybe felt, oh, I was a better parent before the betrayal, and now I'm distant from my child or whatever it is. I would encourage you to draw upon the parenting skills that you previously established and not let those go out the window just because there's been this breach of trust. So being able to try to, like I said, show up. You don't have to be perfect at it. You still may say things that aren't perfect, that aren't 100% holding space for your child. You still may find yourself getting defensive. But if and when that happens, can you go back to your child afterwards and apologize and own your behavior? I think that's a huge part of it. Going back to what you mentioned too about establishing that secure attachment, that consistency in showing up and apologizing and repairing if and when I'm not perfect at navigating these conversations is going to be huge and is going to tell your child, I am a safe person and I make mistakes too.
And that's the learning, right? That's the, hey, they're showing up consistent. They're showing up for me in general. They're coming back. It's not the perfection. It's the consistency and the coming back.
Yes.
Because that shows you're dependable. That shows I can attach to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the one I got for you. And this is hard. This is what makes this so complex. And let's talk about the partners, the betrayed, and the person that's been betrayed. The person that did the betraying and the betrayer. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Early in their journey. So he really hurt her, like bad, right? Mm-hmm. And trust is gone. It's obliterated. And he is scary, right? Mm-hmm. She's living with this guy that's scary, and he's still a dad, right? Mm-hmm. So what about that interaction? When you have a spouse that's going through all of her pain, and then you have the husband, like I watched a lot of them just, she doesn't really trust him to engage in parenting. And this is not black and white. There's no textbook here, okay? So there's that, like, how much does he still need to stay involved even though he's betrayed the trust? Can you speak to that tough dynamic there at all, Morgan?
Yeah, and that's a tricky one. Like you said, there's no textbook. There's no right or wrong way to navigate this. What I've seen in trends in family healing and growth is that the betraying parent, so the one who has acted out, a lot of times has to do a lot of individual work before that trust and connection is reestablished to the level that they want with their child. So early on in recovery, if you're not, I'm speaking as the person who's acted out, if you are not creating safe behaviors, if you're still struggling with the addiction, whatever it is, if you are working on creating safety, that may not be the time where you jump in and try to fix things with your kids. And this kind of, the way I visualize betrayal trauma is that family relationship and healing a lot of times happens later in the process. So like I mentioned, a lot of times children's healing takes longer than a spouse's or a partner's. Keeping that long-term perspective is that, okay, I've hurt my child. This happened within the last month or two, and there's still a lot of pain, and we're all still in individual healing. The reality is your relationship with your child is probably not going to be where you want it to be in the early stages. But beginning to lay the foundation of safety brick by brick, eventually down the road, you can create the relationship and the safety that your child is looking for.
I have some thoughts on this, but I want to hear you on this part. Okay, if I'm finding myself in the very beginning of the journey and I'm just like trying to survive, I'm talking about me, I like that you set that up. Me as the person that did the betraying, that acted out. Then I have my spouse that's in a lot of pain and my partner's in a lot of pain. For me, I'm just trying to keep my head above water.
Mhm.
I'm still a dad. So can you speak to that interaction of I'm not trying to heal the relationship, but I'm still I'm still a parent. So can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. Yeah, that's tricky. I think that's where going back to how was I as a parent before the betrayal or
Okay.
before disclosure? Are there things from that time of life that I can translate over? For example, I may not be on great speaking terms or have this great emotional connection with my child, but I can still show up to their basketball games. I can still take them to practice. I can still invite them to come to family dinner. I can still text them in the morning and let them know that I love them. Again, making sure that even though there's probably a lot of shame that you feel in showing up for your child because you have hurt them, I think one of the most destructive things you could do as a parent is to withdraw entirely and to say,
Mm.
I'm in such a shame storm and I'm so afraid of showing up and hurting my child and I feel like I've hurt them and ruined them for the rest of their lives. So therefore I'm going to back off. I think that's one of the most hurtful things. Show up in the ways that you can. You may not be the most emotionally safe person, but what can you do? Like, what can you give your child right now? And start right there.
Okay, so that is so cool. All right, so check this out, y'all. Our kids, their brains are machines. They are the ability to be able to problem solve and figure things out. That's what they're born to do. So if we leave gaps, they're going to fill them in.
Mm-hmm.
If we leave gaps, they're going to fill them in. And filling it in on their by themselves is so destructive. Like I think about if you take a young child and you say, and you go to an elementary school and you go, okay, what is divorce? You're going to get all sorts of random, like, it's going to be like this just scary, like, for so many of them, it's just scary, like, I don't know, it's just a monster with no real understanding of what it actually is. So what they have to do is the reason it's a monster and it's scary, well, I mean, divorce is hard, is because they have to fill in all those gaps. And they do it when sometimes the most vulnerable is. So I think about the opportunity I call it meeting a child where they're at, is I have to get curious about where they're at. I have to go and I have to lean in with vulnerability. And it's scary to do as a parent, going, hey, dude, because that's what I call my boys, dude. Hey, dude, mom and I don't sleep in the same bedroom. Did you notice that? Yeah. Okay, that's all I get. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's like that like for you? That's scary. Okay. Yeah. Why is that scary? So I'm meeting them where they're at because I'm asking a question and then they're giving me back stuff and then I'm going further into that instead of staying away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And some version of that. I don't know. What do you think about that, Morgan?
Yeah, I love that, and I totally agree that the parent should meet the child where they're at. I think what you just described there and asking those questions and getting curious is what it looks like to hold space for your child. And this another piece that I say may not happen early on in the recovery journey is a lot of times the parents don't yet have the skills to be able to do that. And so I think personal work on the parents' end, are you working with someone to learn those skills, to figure out how to ask those questions, to show up in a safe way, to show empathy? I know a lot of husbands or betraying partners will take a course like the Help Her Heal course, where they're learning all these skills of holding empathy and showing up and being there for my partner and really supporting her in her emotional journey. And I think, can you take that and apply that to your child? How can you help your child heal? Can you show up? And it's probably going to be a lot different than who you were beforehand. This is where that growth comes in, that you're going to be a different man at the end of this experience. You probably never have asked somebody what they have felt like before, really dug into emotions. That's probably going to be uncomfortable for you. But that's where I think the growth and the power happens is, can you learn those relational empathy skills and can you apply them to your child and show up for them where they're at and really get curious and hold their space for them? I think that's where a lot of good healing and growth will happen for the child and in that parent-child relationship.
Okay, so I'm going to start to plug Morgan. She didn't come for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, so this is my invite for those of you who some of this is hitting home. Okay. So a child there is going to have one of four attachment styles or a mixture of them, okay? Secure, disorganized, dismissive, and anxious. And they name them different ways, and they name them different things. You'll find them phrased different ways is what I'm trying to say. That is based upon experience with primary attachment. So right now, your child is adapting to their environment as we speak. They are adapting to their primary caregiver, you, right? So my plea is please get educated yourself and get empowered to try to create what kind of secure environment that can exist in the middle of this. And I'm speaking to the men. Like, please do not, approach your spouse about this, but please don't take the back seat as appropriate. Please don't take the back seat to waiting for your spouse to drive the bus here. Take proactive action with this. And this is where I'm going to plug Morgan. And what's really beautiful is we have these people around us that have been in the hole. They've been in the fire. They know what it's like. And Morgan's got that. And there's a lot of others out there, but it doesn't need to be anything other than a quick consult and saying, hey, can I get educated on this? This is coming up. And just start it. Pretty passionate about that. You'll notice in my podcast, I'm not going to have that strong of a like, hey, please do this. But the little people matter. They can't take care of themselves. Somebody has to do that for them. So, Morgan, you have anything that you want to, anything you're passionate about that you want to share before we start to wrap up?
I think just speaking to that, what you said about starting the conversation. Yes, this is a job and this is something I'm passionate about and I want to make a career out of this, but more than anything, like my passion where it really lies is being an advocate for the children and the adult children and the families. And so if nothing else, like my whole goal and purpose for showing up and doing the work and all the training is to start that conversation and to have this shift in family healing. If I could make a difference in the world in any way, that's what I would hope, is that I could help families to heal those relationships and understand the complexities of betrayal and what's happening and just help families heal. That's what I'm really passionate about. And so whether it's working with the parents to develop those skills or working with the child to navigate what's coming up for them, that's what I want to just be here and be a resource however best I can. And so I'm just super excited that you gave me the space to come and talk. And again, starting the conversation, I think that's where this niche in the betrayal trauma world is we're starting these conversations, and let's get the ball rolling and get some support and help for the children.
Yep. Yeah, the worst thing I can do is just not have the conversation compared to showing up. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for taking care of. And by the way, we didn't talk a lot about adult children. So maybe we're going to have to do that at some point, because that healing, and you probably, there's a good chance that for the men on here, you're an adult child of somebody with sexual misbehavior, because this often could be generational. So we want, Morgan, maybe you can come back and we could talk about the adult child some.
Yeah, I would love it. I agree. I think there's a lot of crossover between children who still live at home versus adult children who are out of the house, but definitely different, unique experiences from both lens, and healing looks a little bit different from each child, and showing up as a parent also looks different. And yeah, again, let's have that conversation. I would love to.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thanks for hanging with us, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.
Hello, my name is Morgan Ellsworth, and I'm excited to share with you about the Resilient Teens support group for teens whose parents have experienced betrayal in their marriage and need support while navigating their own experience with betrayal. This will be a processing group for teens ages 15 to 18 to share their experiences and learn valuable tools for coping, such as emotional regulation, managing triggers, healthy communication, and living true to personal values. This group is open to both boys and girls, but will separate based into two groups based on gender. The group runs on Wednesdays at 4:30 Mountain Time, and you can find the information to register on the Choose Recovery Services website. I'm looking forward to working with you and your teens, and please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions at all. Hello, my name is Morgan Ellsworth, and I'm here to share with you information about a new group offered by Choose Recovery Services and led by myself for adult children who have experienced betrayal at the hands of their parents and need support while navigating their own experience and journey with betrayal. This group is called the Adult Children United and Healing Group and will be a processing group for adult children ages 18 and older to come together to share their experience, gain community, learn valuable tools for coping such as emotional regulation, managing triggers, healthy communication, and living true to personal values. This group meets on Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, and you can register at the Choose Recovery Services website. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm looking forward to working with your adult children who are navigating their own journey of healing.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. If this is something that you connected with, I'd love to meet with you more and talk about it. So what you can do is go to chooserecoveryservices.com or check the show notes. And there what we can do is set up a quick conversation to meet. Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Facade, where we unmask the authentic self.